Nous sommes à Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, le centre de la ville, très exactement dans le quartier de Skid Row. Skid Row, c'est le quartier un peu malfamé de LA. Il y a beaucoup de pauvreté et quand on marche dans les rues aux alentours, comme la 5e rue, tous les principes de sécurité personnelle que l'on peut connaître sont en éveil. À 2 blocs de là, il y a Little Tokyo, le quartier historique japonais de Los Angeles, qui est devenu très touristique. Et puis un peu plus loin, Chinatown, autant de quartiers très intéressants pour les arts martiaux et la self-défense. Mais ce que je vous propose aujourd'hui, c'est d'aller dans le sud de Los Angeles, à Torrance. Là, nous allons y rencontrer Rickson Gracie. Rickson Gracie, c'est un des plus grands champions des années 90, avec plus de 400 combats, des combats sans limite de temps et sans catégorie de poids. Des combats qu'il gagnait souvent par étranglement. Rickson Gracie a un message important à faire passer aux pratiquants d'arts martiaux, aux pratiquants de Gracie et de Jiu-Jitsu, bien sûr, de MMA et d'arts martiaux en général, sur l'état d'esprit des arts martiaux et comment tous les arts martiaux devraient être des disciplines de self-défense.
What makes Jiu-Jitsu effective and realistic style of self-defense is the fact the student, as he prepares himself in Jiu-Jitsu, he becomes aware of all the elements involving a realistic aspect of fighting. From the stand-up perspective, against strikes, how to be comfortable in that area. Eventually, if the fight goes to the ground, he has elements to survive and elements to capitalize on his opponent's weakness and eventually win the fight or create the space he needs to survive and leave the problem. As a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu being attacked in a street situation, his first reaction, of course, will be find himself in the best position that is for the case. So sometimes, if the aggressor is one, he can eventually get in a grapple situation. But if the situation is not that, against multiple attackers or situations like that, he of course needs to approach with a different strategy and create through strikes or to situations where throwing, he's going to create distance to avoid the ground techniques and staying up on his feet to capitalize on eventually possible mistakes. If I think chokes are good for a street, I believe so, but with a different elements on it. The choke is not exactly a defensive technique. The choke is an offense technique. So if I find myself engaging with somebody and I see the possibility to choke him, I will try. But if in the same situation he has friends around or I'm afraid to engage with one and get surprised by others, the choke will be the last thing I will think about it. So chokes are great techniques, but depending against who you're going to use and what kind of situations you're going to apply. You know, as chokes, strikes, elbows, headbutts, you know, eye gouging, all this has a place on self-defense. And all those have a place on self-offense. Because one thing is a clear fight between two men. They can defend and offense. The other thing is a fight against a fragile woman. She cannot be offense against you. She's going to be only surviving and trying to do her best to get on her feet and run away. So Jiu-Jitsu have to give the tools to give to the opponent, to the practitioner, sense of ground, sense of strategy to apply whatever is convenient for their comfortable. The development of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu for the last 20 years is being very disappointed on my ears, on my view, because I see a great popularity of Jiu-Jitsu competition. And that's, of course, is great for great athletes, is great dynamic, but that takes away the direction which Jiu-Jitsu was the purpose, was the foundation of Jiu-Jitsu. In the past, when Jiu-Jitsu athletes going to compete, they willing to go and accept winning or defeat, but their main goal was to be the best guy out there, the best fighter. Today, the competition is still alive, But the main goal today is to make the medal. It's not exactly to be the best guy out there. So in that process, the techniques applied on the competitions, they been more like fighting the anti-jiu-jitsu game. So the fights sometimes are boring, sometimes they very much lack of action, dynamic action to the kill. So that takes from the competition aspect the effectiveness of being in a good real situation, bringing efficiency to get the medal. So they're very efficient to get the medal, but very ineffective in the purpose of being good on the street or on the cage. So it's a huge difference now in what I believe is the best jiu-jitsu for practitioners and what is going on out there. You know, I believe the competition is great for jiu-jitsu, but the set of rules today are diminishing that kind of contribution for the sport and for the self-effectiveness. I believe the rules has to be modified to bring a more realistic aspect to the competition. So the competitors, they will feel more aligned with being in a real situation, which today is completely different. I see jiu-jitsu competition those days going like that, and instead keeping the focus on become effective in a way to give the purpose for the practitioner. So with this said, it's hard for us to modify that without a governing body who gives a better view for the whole problem in general. If I have to have an advice to a beginner practitioner who is interested in jiu-jitsu, we will be definitely looking for a place where he can learn the self-defense of jiu-jitsu. Because you have to understand, jiu-jitsu doesn't start in the guard position. You have to understand your goal is not taking somebody to the ground. It's so many, the elements in jiu-jitsu are so complex. You have to understand your distance. You have to understand the possibilities to avoid strikings, headbutts, elbows, knees. You have to understand how to yourself able to do scales with open hand, side wrist, fists, elbows, headbutts, knees. So keep your base, allow yourself to feel strong against somebody who wants to throw you. All those elements are the roots of jiu-jitsu, are our foundations. If you lack of those knowledge and just put yourself to passing guards and beating bolos and 50-50s, you pretty much have no idea. It's just a fraction of what's supposed to do. So that knowledge is into jiu-jitsu since I understand myself since I understand the word as I understand. And now I can see a lot of practitioners who becoming competitors and then eventually developing techniques to win medals. And once they become black belts and famous, they open schools. But they don't have the roots of the knowledge. They just have the tournament elements to provide. So they will offer to their students a fraction of what they're supposed to teach. And that's nothing wrong in terms of he's still a good intention guy, he's still a good fighter, but he's just teaching a fraction. He don't teach you the whole complete scenario. So that's why I feel like it's a big lack of information, is a big lack of knowledge in today's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu universe. So, and I think it's no mission better in my life to try to organize this and enlighten people of what they really want to learn and how they will proceed in their life in Jiu-Jitsu. Yes, if I want to explain a little bit about the JJB Global Federation, I can tell you, after a life of dedication to the sport, representing the art, fighting, training hard, and teaching my students, I feel like I give already a good contribution to the sport. But as I fading away as a fighter, as diminishing the capability to teach the amount of students I want to teach, every seminar I go, I see a lack, even for, I'm talking about black belts, I'm talking about highest level fighters and competitors. And when I face to face with them and ask them some questions about leverage, about connection, about positions which they're supposed to have in their core, they lack of that knowledge. And feeling that kind of need and understanding the global situation of the sport, I was interested to bringing my contribution to a bigger population, to the real community, Jiu-Jitsu community. So in order to do that, I decided to create the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation, which, different than other organizations, my goal is to restore effectiveness in Jiu-Jitsu. And in order to do that, I have two major goals. One is bringing a new rules for competitors, still competing, still having fun, still enjoying the art, but with a much better core result. Instead, anti-game Jiu-Jitsu stallings, no. The Jiu-Jitsu has a more dynamic action, and that's going to create a much better fighter to handle real situations. That's no doubt about it. Because I have a doubt of a champion today who's specializing in how he's going to do on the cage, how he's going to do on the street. I don't believe he will do good, because he don't practice the elements who's supposed to support him in those street situations and those realistic situations. So my intention is to, through the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation, create a huge educational program, offer for free for the academies, the self-defense curriculum, the ways to teach, the protocols for giving foundations like fundamental classes, for the schools having more students, for the teachers have better knowledge to teach different kind of students, because a competitor, the most important thing he needs as a competitor, and if you want to teach, is get the students who have that kind of competitive skills. And Jiu-Jitsu is not there to favor only the competitors. Jiu-Jitsu is to feed anyone who deserves to get a better comfort, self-confidence. So learning about your base, learning about your skills, your capacity to defend, to survive, to deflect, to strike, to get, so all those elements are crucial in Jiu-Jitsu, and the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation will bring this back, restore the effectiveness of Jiu-Jitsu. So I feel like the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation will fulfill a need, a very important need for the sport and for the community, to not only enhance the industry and creating more jobs and more students, because otherwise, if we don't have a great children's programs, if you don't have a great women's self-defense programs, if we don't have cardio jiu-jitsu, we kind of losing terrain for other martial arts which doesn't have the same effectiveness, but they have programs for kids, they have programs for women. So we should create, through the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation, a good format to fulfill the need of people have to learn Jiu-Jitsu in the proper way. And that's pretty much is my goal, and I'm very motivated to develop in that sense, and eventually we're going to take over. We're going to take over. And eventually, motivated to, that's pretty much about your skills, the ground techniques.